Salim, thank you for your time here. Good to see you.
Very much, and good to see you. Good afternoon to all your listeners and viewers.
Absolutely. I want to hear from you as a practitioner in the mental health field. How do you feel about this long time coming move by Ghana's parliament?
This comes as a great news. It brings a lot of elation to all mental health practitioners here in Ghana. It's a time of happiness. We are really grateful to the Parliament House of Ghana. We are thankful to all advocates and those who have led this fight and challenged all people who had to push for the law, especially our parliamentarians, to have to repeal and then do away with the act of misdemeanor, which put people who attempted suicide as criminals and therefore were rather being seen as criminals rather than being given support. So it's a happy time here in Ghana for healthcare practitioners, mental health practitioners especially, and we are really happy and elated this day has come today.
I see. So talk to us about how decriminalizing, the issue around suicide could help people who have attempted it.
Well, let me start from this point. Indeed, life is precious. And for most people, the argument has been that if life is precious and was not given to you by yourself, you don't have the right to take it. And this was a thinking around which attempted suicide was criminalized. So if you attempted to do that, then you are up to face the law and go up to 3 years imprisonment. However, if life is that precious, why do we think that people take their lives? So it means that for any human to get to a point where they feel their life is not worth it, then it's not a decision. It means there's a disorder in there. There's a challenge there. So most people, or let me say all people who attempt suicide, might be suffering or undiagnosed some depressive episodes, which could be severe. And this is what leads to the suicidal ideations, the feelings of worthlessness, and then the hopelessness, and then they move to take their lives or attempt the suicide. Now, when that happened, because it was criminalized, how then do you go out to tell a friend or to tell someone that, look, last night I tried to end my life, if what it will end is you being put behind bars? So then help-seeking behaviors were reduced significantly. Now, decriminalizing it simply means that anytime you have found someone who feels worthless, hopeless, and suicidal, instead of taking them to the police station, you bring them to the nearest hospital or clinic to be assessed. And if there's a difficulty, they'll get the right help they require.
I see. Fantastic. But the opposing argument has been that once it is decriminalized, as it has been done, then would have more people thinking it's okay to do that.
And that's the irony of it, like I keep saying. If life is that precious, why would anyone want to take their own lives? I love my life. You love your life. So anytime you hear any person saying they want to take their own life or attempt it, they are not making that decision in a mental state that is well oriented to time, place, and person. There could be some distress or some disorder happening. So what they need is for you to show them more care, empathy, and then figure out why do they want to end their lives. I do not believe the decriminalization of suicide attempts in Ghana would increase the attempt to suicide, but rather it will let people open up and speak more about their thought patterns and how they feel about their lives, especially when they feel like ending it. And this would allow us to give them the necessary support and therapy and intervention that would help them to deal with their suicidal ideations.
I see. Let me just say at this point to our viewers and anybody who would be watching at this point that if this conversation is a trigger of some form for you, you should seek help, and perhaps a good time for you to tune off. You can join us maybe in 20 minutes when we go back to Kenya. But this is a conversation that we need to have, and I apologize if it triggers you. How big is the issue of suicide in Ghana?
Suicide in Ghana is big. Why? Because even the ones that are reported in cases in clinic or those that seek help, the numbers seem to be rising across the globe. Suicide attempts happening at emergency hospitals. We see people coming in with attempted suicide, having ingested some toxic.
Well, it looks like Salim has frozen on that connection. Well, Salim, you're back. We lost you for a bit, so if you could just,
Sorry about that. I
no,
was
it's
saying
fine.
that you were asking about its prevalence and how it's a big problem. And I was saying that in clinic and hospitals, we see people coming in with self-harm, having intoxicated or taken in some toxic substances, having cut themselves or having tried to hang themselves. And this is repeated. Now, these are the ones we see in the hospital. There are a number of deaths that we believe do happen at homes, in places, accidents. That could be attempts of suicide or suicide actually practices. So indeed, it's a problem that is underreported. And even the reported ones are alarming enough. So its decriminalization, we also believe very much would give us more space for people to report these things, and we can have some valid data to make predictions and make interventions based on the data.
I see. So what we've seen, and I want us, we'll talk about how seriously, this mental health condition is taken in the country. But first, I have seen people put numbers as about 1,500 cases of suicide every year in Ghana. Is that an exaggeration, or that is reflective of, how things are happening?
That would not be an exaggeration. I might say it's maybe not even up to the figures, because like I keep saying, a lot of mental health disorders are underreported. People do not seek help like they should. People are stigmatizing it. People don't talk about it. We do have deaths that sometimes are unexplainable. Some of them happen and they look like they are murders. Some happen and they are suicides. Some happen. In fact, people try to self-harm, and in such cases, it leads to suicide. So I would not say that those numbers are exaggerated, but rather say they might be underreported. So decriminalizing it now gives us the ample space and opportunity to collect the data properly. Because if you report it now, if you seek help, no one is going to stigmatize you. No one is going to call in the police on you, and the police will not have any business arresting you. But rather, you'll be taken through the psychotherapeutic process. If you need medication, you'll be given that, and that would help you to deal with your difficulty. So the numbers are real.
One of the things that mental health advocates like yourself have continued to ask for is a lot more attention paid to mental health issues in Ghana. It would seem that the bill alone cannot decisively deal with the issues of mental health in Ghana. What else would you expect, the government to do, the social services to do, once, this has happened, that suicide is no longer criminal? What else can people do to reduce the numbers?
So the next level of this would be the education and advocacy. Let me start from the government level. The decriminalization is such a great thing, and we thank everybody. The second thing would be to make it accessible and affordable to people, so that when they feel that way, when they have this distress, this disorder, they can find facilities within their communities, and then they should be able to pay for the service. So on our national health insurance, the next advocacy is that can we put mental health onto it, so that people don't have to pay out of pocket to seek mental health services. That would be on the government front, which we would push for. Now, in the communities, we need to do a lot of education and advocacy around stigmatization. Because though it's decriminalized, if the society, the people around you still stigmatize you, seeking of help can be a challenge. On the mental health social services front, this is time for us to sometimes do pro bono for our patients. It's time for us to give our patients the best of care. Let's make ourselves available, be empathic enough, educate people on it. And I believe would be able to provide people services that would encourage and promote well-being and mental health in general here in Ghana.
Okay, so I glean that decriminalizing suicide alone will not solve the issue of the heightened numbers we see annually in Ghana. So what systems would you expect in place? Because one thing that I even realized talking about this is the fact that I couldn't direct people who feel triggered by this conversation where to go to get help because I don't know and perhaps they don't exist. So what systems do you think should be in place for people who have mental health issues who are looking to take their own lives?
Well, the community mental health system is already in place, but we'll need to empower it. We need to retool it. We need to give more professional development training to those who man it. So what I would think is that every community that has clinic, that has a hospital, we should have a mental health section, which is something that is already in the Mental Health Act. So let's now implement the content of the Mental Health Act so that mental health services are brought closer to the doorsteps of people. And even here in Ghana, I'm sure, or I'm not sure, I know about where nurses are sent to people's homes to visit, especially when they have to be on medications or have to take injections monthly. But we'll have to re-empower and do more of these things. So let's also make available emergency contact numbers that would need, and all the let me call the organizations, the Ghana Psychological Association, the Ghana Psychology Council, will all have to come together now and make sure that the information doesn't only stay in the books with parliament or government, but it goes to every rural area, every urban center, every corner of village, so that they know that when you do have suicidal ideations, when you hear voices, when you feel like ending your life, it's not your own decision. You might have a mental health disorder, and it's okay to seek help for it, and you will not be put behind bars when that happens.
I see. One of the things that we have seen in a number of African countries, including Ghana, is the issue of confidentiality. People are worried that it is the health professionals who would stigmatize and not keep their conditions confidential. That's one thing I want you to address. But while you're doing that, you talk to us about whether or not there are, a very effective communication system like hotlines for people to call when they are in a situation like that.
Yes, there are hotlines for suicidal ideations. There are hotlines for suicidal attempts in Ghana. The Ghana Health Service with the Ministry of Health have programs that make it available for people to call in. But like you just said, the stigma, the confidentiality might not allow people to even dial those numbers to seek the service. So how do you ensure that professionals are confidential or keep the privacy of their patients seriously? That would be to re-entrench the Mental Health Act and make sure that every professional who is providing services go by what is laid down in their ethical procedures. And that would also involve that patients being assertive enough to speak up when they feel uncomfortable about settings. But the onus indeed lies on the professional to ensure that the privacy and confidentiality of all patients that come into their facility or seek their services is maintained. How do you do this? It will be important to have very private consulting rooms, keeping your data or patient information locked under key. In fact, now we have a lot of software that will allow you to keep privacy of patients within apps or on your PC such that people can get access to it. You don't need to go announce it in public to the family, especially because we are a communal society where we might go to the same churches, same mosques, go to the same games. It is not necessary to go discuss the issues that you see in clinic with people. Yes, in advocacy and education, sometimes you can give examples, but make sure you are not pointing to examples that give signals to people or patients you have seen who might be in that same vicinity or environment. So yes, indeed, healthcare or mental health care providers or professionals will need to ensure privacy and confidentiality, and that is one way you can do it. Secondly, I think it's time also for patients or clients in our country to take up cases of confidentiality seriously and sue professionals who disclose it without their permission. All of these are provided for in the Mental Health Act. So if you feel any professionals that abuse their privacy and confidentiality and put you in harm's way, or disclose information you did not give them consent to, you should take up the case in the law courts so that when we have one or two cases that indeed work, it would deter others from doing same. But I believe every professional, and that's why you have the name professional. So please, let's do better at it. Let's keep the names of our patients away from public's eye. Let's not stigmatize. But at this point, I would like to talk about something we call the self-stigmatization. So yes, before one might stigmatize you, you as a patient might also self-stigmatize. So it's good that you do introspection and know that mental health is one of the normal processes that the human brain would go through as a result of stresses, sad feelings, anxious feelings, and sometimes it can be overwhelming to a part where you feel that you are not functional in your social, personal, or occupational areas. And sometimes life can feel worthless and hopeless. Don't feel you are the only one, because every human sometimes feels that way.
Well, so Salim, how does self-stigma present itself?
Well, self-stigma sometimes can present as one, not seeking help, two, becoming paranoid, and then assuming that everyone else or everybody around you is talking about you or listening into what you're saying, because you yourself feel that whatever you are going through is something that is just unique or significant to you. So you feel that this is your doing, this is your problem, I caused it. Because for instance, let me give a scenario. If you're going through a depressive episode and you're sad, possibly maybe you have what it takes to be happy financially, but now you have an episode of depression. You believe that you may have been doing something wrong, especially people attach it to religious or spiritual reasons. So maybe I have committed some sin, I'm not serving God right, that's why I'm going through all this process and I deserve it. This is self-stigma. Because what you are going through is a mental disorder and has nothing to do with what you did against God or to anybody. But it's time for you to step out of your room, pick your phone, book an appointment, and go see a mental health professional. And when you get there, don't also feel like everyone is looking at you, they are laughing at you, they are looking at how you are walking, they are going to listen into your conversation.
Well, those are little things, but they are important, aren't they? I want us to talk about the role of the media in this educational process to ensure that stigmatization is reduced, to ensure that there is great awareness on mental health and issues around suicide.
Now, with the media, I want to make it broad and start with the movie industry. I think a time has come where we must start also depicting mental health and how it is objectively assessed in our movies. Because most of the time, how we present content on mental health in movies goes to add to the stigma. So then people watch a lot of movies, watch a lot of documentaries, and they feel mental health is a strange thing. And once you go through it, you should be an outcast, and then people then stigmatize. Secondly, advocacy and education cannot be done except with the media. Just like we are having this conversation this afternoon. If you don't give this platform, if you do not share it amongst people, if you don't spread it to the community, if people don't get to hear it, then we don't get to achieve anything. So indeed, the media has a very significant role to play in making sure that mental health becomes a daily conversation in our homes. It becomes an accepted conversation in our schools, in our workplaces, and also maybe advocacy and fighting for people's rights. The media can help in this regard. You spoke about issues of privacy. Sometimes on our sets, in our news discussions, people's mental health is sometimes assessed online, and sometimes there are people who are not professionals, and we make sly comments about it, we make jokes about it, and this goes to add to the stigma. So it's time when the media is, and I really love the fact that the moment you realize we had not made statements regarding it's triggering people, you quickly stepped in and said, if this is going to be triggering for you, you can take a time off and seek help. These are some of the things we encourage media persons and houses to do. Be sensitive about people's well-being and don't think it's all about giving the information.
Very well. So I need to let you go, but quickly tell us, where do people in Ghana, people who are residing in Ghana at the moment, go to for help? If you know the numbers, share with us. If you don't, where do they find them?
Every facility municipal district hospital in your community has a mental health unit.
I see.
For every CHIP compound, for every municipal audit, they have a mental health unit. And if you get there, you might not see a clinical psychologist or psychiatrist at that point, but there'll be a mental health nurse who would then help you to reach the necessary professional that you need to see on initial assessments.
I know there's much more to talk about, even with the resources, whether or not the personnel are there to help. But we'll leave that for another time. It's a good step that has been taken, and kudos to Ghana. Hopefully the other African countries are watching as well. Salim, thank you so much for such a great conversation.
Thank you very much for your time, and do have a great day.
Indeed, you too. Salim Wangabi is a clinical psychologist. We've been discussing issues around suicide and generally mental health in Ghana on the back of the country decriminalizing suicide. Countries like Nigeria is still quite a criminal issue, and we hope that changes come in the future. You're watching Village Square Africa. When we come back, let's join the heat in Kenya.